Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. The top four race in the Premier League continues to heat up with Arsenal ending Manchester United's unbeaten run under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. How did Arsenal do it? Where did Manchester United go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to briefly break down how Arsenal beat Manchester United. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game, and why Arsenal were able to go ahead in the opening period. Then move to the second half, see what changes Manchester United made before Arsenal were able to kill off the game. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Arsenal more of a 3-4-1-2, Aubameyang and Lacazette ahead of Ozil, out in the wing-back roles, Kolasinac and Maitland-Niles, and at midfield, Aaron Ramsey and Xhaka. Then we move to Manchester United. They started off with more of a flat 4-4-2, Lukaku and Rashford up front, out in the wider areas, Pogba and Dalot, and at midfield, Fred and Nemanja Matic. So now let's get to the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game, and what both sides did right and wrong in the first half. So when we break down Arsenal against Manchester United, we have to start with Arsenal. 3-4-1-2. What were the pros? What were the cons? Defensively, they looked to press from the front, which was different than Manchester United. They had the center forward stepping to the center backs to ensure they couldn't build out the back. In deeper positions, Nemanja Matic was pressed by Mesut Ozil, who did a very good job, given the fact that Matic is a competent passer and could possibly dictate tempo from deeper positions. So they had him step there. They would want the wing backs to push forward to the fullbacks, and obviously that could leave Pogba and Dalot in free space. But what happens there that they have a center back that they can push out if need be, and then in midfield the battle looks pretty set because they could have Xhaka step to Dalot if need be. They could have Ramsey push out in that other role to Fred if that was required as well. Sometimes Dalot would be the spare man, but that was kind of how they're going about things from the front. Whereas for Manchester United, they kind of stuck to what they did very well against PSG, and that allowed Arsenal to find their openings, because what happened there was that you obviously have Xhaka and you have Ramsey in those deeper roles, and what they ended up doing here was that they had Lukaku and Rashford sit off, and then they had Matic and they had Fred step forward as well. So that created the box, and that obviously left Arsenal with space in wider areas to create chances. Pogba was trying to step out to Socrates when he had the opportunity, but that would leave space for Maitland-Niles to push forward. But Pogba did track back very well, and there wasn't much of a threat down that right-hand side if Shaw didn't push forward to step to Maitland-Niles. So that was kind of how they went about things on the right-hand side. They couldn't really get anything through the middle, but there was an issue with this, because one of the first issues was that Mesut Ozil now was able to drift laterally to get the ball in pockets of spaces, looking to try and pick it up to either side of Matic or Fred. He was dropping deeper and then looking to push forward with the play. That often didn't work well for him. Sometimes there's a misplaced pass. Sometimes he was pushing forward offside. So that was a big issue. But what ended up happening there was that they found space down the left-hand side through Kolasinac, and he, in the opening 12 minutes or so before they took the lead, was one of their key players. And Ozil did play a key role as well in how he was going about his business and finding space. And that was kind of what Arsenal did well in that opening period. They didn't really test David De Gea that much, but they were finding gaps and they were getting into good positions, just lacking that extra bit of quality. We look to one of the opportunities that they do get. You have Mesut Ozil dropping off a bit deeper ahead of Dalot, because we had Manchester United dropping off into more of a narrow 4-4-2. And what happens there? He picks up the ball and he locates the run of Aubameyang dropping off to drag out Smalling, and he instantly slides the ball out to his teammate in Kolasinac, and Kolasinac is able to deliver across through the box because he doesn't have Young stepping close to him, and it evades Shaw and it evades Lindelof with Lacazette breaking into the box. But that was one good opportunity that they did have there. We look to another opportunity where it's a Smalling header and it's Kolasinac who ends up intercepting it, and Ramsey flicks it over Fred to get Kolasinac going forward, and he slides the ball in between Young and in between Smalling for Aubameyang, breaking free into that space, but his cross from the left channel is overhit. But again, you get to see how they're pushing forward, where they're finding space, and that was one great opportunity there for them to really punish this side. When you look at the build-up to the goal, what happens there is it's a simple switch out from Socrates to Maitland-Niles, and Pogba was caught a bit higher, but he ended up tracking well, and he plays the ball into Lacazette, who holds up Luke Shaw. And what happens there is that with Xhaka pushing forward, he drops it off to him, and no one closes Xhaka, and his shot does catch De Gea off guard, who steps one way, but the ball swerves the other way, and that was how they were able to go ahead. And that goes to show it's obviously something different from the right-hand side, but that was the build-up to the goal for them there. Shortly after that, we continue to see more spells from Arsenal and how they're able to get forward. One is where you end up seeing Fred play a loose pass into midfield. Ramsey intercepts it, and Ramsey plays a forward pass to Xhaka, who's able to find the pass in between Fred and Matic for Mesut Ozil, and now Ozil's able to break forward. And what happens there is that when he breaks forward, he fizzles the ball into Aubameyang, who's ahead of Ashley Young, and he turns and he skies his effort over the net from a narrow position. But that is how they're kind of going about their business. That's where they're getting their chances, and that was very key for them. We look to two more opportunities. You see the ball played into Rashford, who does drop off a bit deeper. Koscielny tracks him, and as he tries to drop it off to Pogba, Ramsey ends up intercepting it and playing it instantly between the lines for Ozil, who's ahead of Fred, and he breaks forward and slides it to Lacazette ahead of Matic, who cuts in on Smalling, but Young comes across and blocks a shot. But just like that, quickly transitioning, finding Ozil in space, because as those two midfielders push forward, there's so much space between the lines for Ozil to get into, just lacking that final bit of quality. And the final opportunity that we do see is we have Lacazette drop off into a deeper position. And what happens there is this was after United moved to a 3-5-2, and we'll get to that in a bit. But after the goal, they did move to a 3-5-2 to try and press forward. What happens there is that we see him slide the ball in between Dalot and in between Ashley Young for Kolasinac breaking forward. But again, another quality cross into the box isn't met by Aubameyang, isn't met by any other Arsenal player. And that was the problem with Arsenal. They were getting into good positions, not really testing David De Gea, because Manchester United did have the better chances in the first half. And even though they did go behind very early, they weren't really in much danger there. You could just probably question their ability to push a bit forward and dropping off a bit deep. So now let's get to the Manchester United, see how they went about their business, and find out the pros and cons that they encountered in the opening half. When we get to Manchester United, like I said, they switched between two systems in that opening half. Initially, they were dropping off a bit deeper prior to the goal. And what happened there was that, like I said, a bit too conservative, obviously looking to play on the counterattack, looking to keep the midfield very narrow and tight to prevent Arsenal from dominating those central areas and finding space between the lines. But that was backfiring due to Arsenal's initial system. So what we did see them create a quality chance and the better chance prior to Xhaka's goal. And what happened there was that we ended up seeing Xhaka, not a loose ball, into Fred, who switched the ball out to Luke Shaw. And when Luke Shaw got the ball, he was able to slide it in between Maitland-Niles and Aaron Ramsey. And what happened there is that he played it into the path of Paul Pogba, who did step forward ahead of Socrates. So he split those two markers there, and he was able to get around them. And what we ended up seeing was Shaw delivering the cross into the box for Lukaku, breaking in ahead of Monreal. But he fired a shot off the ground and off the crossbar. But that is kind of what United wanted here, because with the two strikers, what you do get is that against the three, yes, you are outnumbered, but with the wing backs pushing forward, there's space to attack in the channels, and that is what Solskjaer wanted. Or if they can make runs in between the three, in the spaces between the wide center backs and Koscielny. So that's what they wanted. But following the goal, they did move to more of a 3-5-2, because what we ended up seeing was that Ashley Young was holding his position, Dalot was pushing a bit higher, and that was to ensure that Kolasinac was pegged back and Luke Shaw was already getting forward. So obviously you have those two and Pogba getting a bit more freedom, and we did see a difference in their pressing, but it did lead to some issues as well, because what would happen now was, like I said, you would have the front two pushing forward, and then you would have your man right there, and Paul Pogba stepping to Socrates. What does that leave? Obviously, the wing backs against the wing backs, and then you do have the central midfielders against central midfielders, but Mesut Ozil is still available. But in the earlier stages, prior to getting to that, what we did see was on one occasion, we saw Pogba step to Leno. We saw Lukaku in more of a left-sided role. We saw Rashford near Monreal. But what happened was that the Manchester United center midfield were sitting off in a deeper position, and that press was bypassed simply by getting the ball out to Xhaka, or they could have got it out to Ramsey because there was no markers on them, even with the wing backs out as well. So that was one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it was that Pogba stepping to Socrates does leave space for Mesut Ozil because they are outnumbered in midfield when he takes that gamble to the center backs. We saw that as well, where Pogba stepped out to Socrates, and Socrates slid the ball to Maitland-Niles, who was pressed late by Shaw. What you end up seeing there is that he's able to wrap it around him for Ramsey, who is tracked by Matic. But what happens now is that you have Mesut Ozil darting into that right channel as well, and it occupies Fred, and now Ramsey could turn back and play the ball out to Xhaka because no one is stepping to him, and the center backs aren't looking to push forward with Lacazette and Aubameyang in those central roles. So that was one way of going about it. But even when we look at that, Manchester United still had the better chances in the first half, despite going into halftime down 1-0. The tactical change did see Dalot push Kolasinac a bit deeper, and what happened there now was that we had more of a midfield battle intact because you had still Ozil tracking Matic, and you had Pogba now against Ramsey and Fred against Xhaka. What happened here was that in the earlier stages, we do have the 3v2 there, and we had Young who was able to push forward, and with Kolasinac pegged back due to the fact that Dalot was pushing higher, he was able to find Lukaku, who did drop off a bit deeper to drag out Monreal. What happened here was that throughout this first half, the reason why United were able to bypass and get into good positions behind this Arsenal midfield and defense was due to the hold-up play of Lukaku, who was doing a great job of holding off defenders, linking play with his teammates. He was just very sharp. The same with Rashford, despite lacking the cutting edge in the final third, more so to Rashford. What happens there is that when Lukaku drops off, he ends up poking the ball to Fred, who slides it out to Pogba to gain a yard on Ramsey and bring it back to Lukaku ahead of the back five. What he does locate is Rashford making the run in between Socrates and Maitland-Niles into the box. However, he's unable to test Leno from that area, and the ball goes out for a corner kick. But just goes to show how they're able to go about their business and find gaps in this Arsenal backline and what they were trying to do. Because like I said, in that 3-5-2, you have Rashford and Lukaku trying to make those runs in the channels or in between the center backs, and that was an example of that right there. Shortly after that, we see another benefit of Manchester United switching to the three-man backline was that when Arsenal tried to press now, they were unable to get all three of them because they were still having Ozil on Matic, so they had the spare man, and who it was that it was Chris Smalling, who initially, when you think about it, not the best ball player, but he did help ignite one of Manchester United's better attacks. What do we see here? Him sliding the ball out to Luke Shaw, and with Pogba pushing forward, now you have Maitland-Niles and Ramsey looking to try and close down that space. But what happens here is that we see him play the ball into Rashford, who drags out Koscielny, and he's able to drop off the ball to Pogba now ahead of Ramsey, who again finds Rashford. And when he finds Rashford, Koscielny is tracking back into his position. You have Socrates stepping to Rashford, but what happens now is that Lukaku makes the run in between Monreal and in between Koscielny, with Fred making the run in between Kolasinac and Monreal. The pass into Lukaku does see him get the better of Koscielny trying to retreat his run, and he does use his power to get away from Monreal, but as he tries to round Leno, he gets stuck in his feet, and he fires a shot on goal that Leno's able to push away before he pokes the ball across the box, and nothing leads to that. But again, it's just great link-up play between the forwards, and again, again, it stems from the back three, and it's a great run from Lukaku. You're seeing what Manchester United are trying to do. One of their final best opportunities of that half. Great combination play down the left channel that leads to Pogba clipping out a diagonal to Lukaku, trying to peel off Monreal, but he's able to see Dalot making the overlapping run, and he plays him in. And as he pulls the ball back for Rashford, luckily Xhaka gets across to deny Manchester United an opportunity to level just ahead of halftime. When we break down the first half, you see how Arsenal were able to get their chances down the left-hand side, but the switch to a 3-5-2 did help out United, and we saw great center forward play from Lukaku, and United had the better chance testing Leno. So now let's get to the second half, see how both sides would look to try and change their systems in that second half, and how Arsenal were able to claim all 3 points. So the start of the second half saw United make another tactical change, moving to a 4-1-3-2. It saw Dalot, Fred, and Pogba sit ahead of Matic so that they could push forward. Dalot in particular trying to get in behind Kolasinac, breaking into that right channel whenever he could to deliver crosses and peg the Arsenal wing back into deeper positions. And we saw Matic have more of an influence, even though Ozil was trying to track him and close him down. He, from deeper positions, the first opportunity, he clips the ball over the top for Lukaku to spin in and break free, with Socrates stepping forward to keep him onside, and Leno was able to get off his line quickly to read and assess the situation to sweep up. Later on in that, shortly after that, we saw Matic again from a deeper position, clipping the ball into that space. Kolasinac was caught high, Lukaku peeling off Monreal, and again you have Dalot breaking into that right channel. He delivers across to the edge of the box. That Pogba ends up dummying, and it falls to Fred, and Fred shots blocked by Koscielny, but Pogba still continues with the play. He's able to turn away from Ozil and play it back to Fred, who squares it to Rashford. Rashford in this position is able to poke the ball in between Xhaka and Socrates, and then Koscielny and Monreal for Lukaku, free on goal with no one stepping to him, and he pokes his effort on goal, but Leno makes another key save. Those were the key chances that United had in that opening 15 to 20 minutes of the second half, besides Ramsey being dispossessed and Pogba holding him off and sliding the ball in between Koscielny and Socrates for Rashford again, but unable to get his foot on the ball, and Leno was able to sweep up, which basically epitomizes Rashford's night. We did see them press from the front as well on goal kicks, where you had Rashford and you had Lukaku stepping to the wider center backs. You had Fred stepping to Koscielny. You had also Dalot stepping forward and dealing with the threat over there in Xhaka. And what happened there was that he would pinch. There was one time where they ended up clearing the ball and clipping it over because Pogba was dealing with Ramsey. The other time he tried Leno to clip it over Dalot to get it to Kolasinac, and Dalot instantly tried to track and retreat, and he did a good job, and Kolasinac was unable to keep the ball into play. Unfortunately, this game did end with a controversial penalty that Aubameyang was able to convert, and after that we saw Manchester United bring on Martial, move to a 4-3-3 with Martial and Rashford wide. Eventually Arsenal came back with that and moved to a 3-4-3 with Iwobi to offer more of a pressing threat up front with Iwobi and Aubameyang in wider areas. Arsenal also ended up, well, we saw Greenwood come on eventually after that. They moved to a 4-4-2 Manchester United, and then eventually Denis Suarez came on for Arsenal, 5-4-1, dropping off deeper, blocking off the supply lines as they decide to drop off deeper rather than press from the front and preserve their lead. When we break down this game as a whole, Manchester United may have been the better side and created the better chances, but here Arsenal executed when they needed to, and it was kind of a bit of a role reversal where now, despite playing well, Manchester United somehow, due to some great goalkeeping from Leno and some players not performing to their peak in the final third, falling behind and now dropping out of the top four. But let me know what you guys think. Can Manchester United keep up this form but win games? And what about Arsenal? How long will this home streak continue? And which one of these sides will finish in the top four? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget, I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.